Hello, this is Reverend Don Lewis coming to you from the beautiful metaverse and more specifically from beautiful Danville, Illinois, homeland of the Corellian tradition. And this is Midday with Reverend Don. Welcome. And as you know, if you follow Midday with Reverend Don, you can type your questions or comments into whatever platform you happen to be watching on, and they will show up here in my chat room. I will have to say that I'm not entirely sure where all this might be going today. Um, And I think I've spoken at some length about difficulties we've been having with this platform. Well, we seem to be going out to all of our pages, but I had to do a workaround today to make that happen. And, I'm not particularly happy about having to do a workaround on a paid platform. I think it really should not be necessary, especially one that formerly worked so beautifully. So I'm a little unhappy with where Restream is at this point, and I've been saying it for a while. And I think if anything, it's a little stronger today. And hello to Reverend Mary in the chat room. It's good to see you, Reverend Mary. So I think that one of the things to talk about, my subject for today is the end of this year and the beginning of next year, and I think that yeah, I think we're probably going to be looking at a new platform for our video broadcasting in the new year. Um, I wasn't entirely sure I was going to be able to make this program go today. It was very wonky. And, I have been broadcasting through Restream for a couple of years now, and for most of that time it was excellent. And then they decided to improve it. And hello to Moondancer in the chat room. And I think this is something that is a bit of a lesson to anyone who is paying attention, that you should not fix what is not broken, because the chances that you're going to break it are high. Um, it's much better, in my opinion, to to work on improving rather than changing, unless there's an actual need to do so. And there are a lot of people, it seems, who want to totally rewrite the world at present. And obviously, nothing is going to stop them. But I really think they should be asking themselves, are these things really broken before they take them apart? Because there's no putting them back together once they're taken apart. And I guess we'll see. We'll see where that all leads. As we come to the end of any year, we want to focus on the things we want to release, the things we want to rewrite, the things we want to rebuild, the things that are not as we want them to be. And also on those good things that we want to keep as they are. So, what I would say to you on this second day of December, and hello to Black Crystal in the chat room, and hello to Jason in the chat room, Jason Deathridge. It's good to see you. And I would say that it's very important for us to take this time to look at what we wish to preserve going forward and what we wish to change going forward, because the change of the year is a very good time to start new things. And if you look at all of the different New Year's holidays, they all have certain things in common. One of them is the overthrowing of the current order, and most New Year's holidays have an aspect of chaos in them. Whether we're talking about Samhain or April 1st or Saturnalia, they all have that overturning of the normal code of action. And hello to Reverend Ed Carr in the chat room. Hello to Moondancer in the chat room. And what this is a ceremonial recreation of the chaos moment. And what is the chaos moment? And I've talked about this many times. And I guess that's really kind of today's subject. The chaos moment is the moment when old patterns are disrupted and any new pattern can be created. In magic, it's the moment when you set your um, magic intent before you've actually set the path. The chaos moment is when you're preparing it, when you are when you've made the decision to change, but before you've made that change. And that's what these holidays represent. When you go forward from them, you've made your changes, you've set your course, and you go forward with it. And so I would say to you, as we wind down the calendar year, hello to Renee in the chat room. It's good to see you, Renee. Think about those things that you wish to do going forward, the things you want to take forward with you, the things you want to leave behind, and be clear in what you want to do. And if you do that, I think you will find a much more focused new year. And I'm not talking about going out and making silly New Year's resolutions. I'm talking about making actual plans of what you want to see in your life. One of the problems with so-called New Year's resolutions is that it's become the custom to set things that are overly ambitious or aspirational rather than practical. And you want to keep your goals practical so that you can actually do them. And I want to take a moment and say happy birthday to my son, John, who is celebrating his birthday today. And I'm hoping that he has a wonderful year coming. And there he is. But I hope that all of us can really think about what it is we want, because it seems like our society and the world are really planning to break the existing mold. And this is completely in keeping with the changing of the age. There is nothing surprising that something like this should happen. But we need to be mindful, we especially in marginalized communities need to be mindful of what we want to see happen and not simply react to things. And as you know, I often talk about what appears on Ed the Pagan's page on Facebook, because he's often asking very interesting questions. Lately, he's talking about influencers versus leaders, and who constitutes someone whose opinion you would listen to. And these are things you should probably think about at this time. Who are you listening to, and why are you listening to them, and what is their track record? I think that very often people are not very discriminate in who they choose to take their advice from. One of the things that often irritates me is I'll find myself reading a column on, say, fashions or social custom. And I'm reading what are basically ridiculous ideas and saying to myself, well, who's saying this? Are people actually listening to a completely disembodied voice, which is telling them, well, you should do this, or you should do that, or you should do the other thing for reasons they don't know, often to make money for a certain industry? We're not very discerning in where we take our advice. And I think one of the things we should all do is just take a moment and become more discerning in who we're listening to and why. At least when it comes to opinion setting. And, if they're telling you, this is what you should do politically, have they been politically successful in their career? If they're telling you, well, you should dress in a certain way, are they someone whose fashion sense you admire? Are they someone you even know? Why would you be listening to them if you don't? If they're telling you this trend is coming in, or that trend is outdated, if you're following trends, which I try not to do, but if you are, the same question comes in. Who is speaking? Why are you listening to them? What makes you think they know anything? As opposed to being propaganda for a certain industry. I think we're going to have to pay more attention to that in the future than in the past, but there was never a time that you should not have been paying attention to that. The question of following the money has always been very important in paying attention to what you're listening to. Because very often people are speaking from interest and trying to orient society in one way or another for their particular, usually mercantile interests. Now, I'll tell you straight up where my interests lie. I'm very concerned with the civil rights of our community, the social rights of our community, and the effectiveness of our community. And most everything I say is going to come down to what I consider to have a positive effect on those particular issues. And if you ask yourself, how effective have I been in my career? Well, I can't answer that for you. You have to look at my career for yourself and ask yourself, have I been particularly effective? But you can do that through 20 years at Magic TV/Corellian TV, 20 years at witchschool.com, 45 years as first priest in the Corellian tradition, now in a state of retirement, but still one of the first priesthood. I think, although I've certainly had reversals, as we all do, I think my track record is nothing to ignore. So I don't feel bad offering advice because I feel like I have some experience to offer it from, but I'll still tell you, only apply it if it makes sense to you. What works for me might not work for you, and you want to keep that in mind. Things that I might be willing to go out and do tomorrow might be beyond what you are willing to do, and things that you're willing to do tomorrow might be beyond what I'm willing to do. And this is why it's so important to have more than one person doing things, more than one set of skills, and why it's so important that we avoid being a cookie cutter factory. And there are many traditions in the metaphysical world which operate on a cookie cutter basis. That is to say, their goal is to exactly replicate the teacher in every aspect, in their thoughts and their opinions, etc. So you never get a diversity of skills. And any flaw in that person is simply going to be replicated many times and will never be rectified. I have always stood against that sort of thing. I've always believed that we must have many points of view, many sets of skills, many abilities in order to succeed. And I have always tried to promote people with those differing skill sets, those differing attitudes. And sometimes that's blown up in my face, which is to be expected when you're dealing with many different people. But overall, I'm still here. The organizations I have dealt with are still running and still doing well. So I think my track record speaks pretty well for itself. And what I would say to you is that in everything that you do, you want to pay attention to whether you're making practical decisions that you can actually carry out and that you're prepared to carry them out. It does no good to give lip service to a large array of ideas and attitudes that you never put into practice. It's very important, in my opinion, even if you're dealing with a smaller number of ideas and practices, that you actually do them. You actually work with the things that you believe to build your better world, your better life. And, someone else may be out there saying this and that and the other thing and so forth, but if they're not actually doing it, they don't really know if it would actually work or not. I spent part of this morning discussing various organizations in the world, and I'm not going to name any of them or say in what context, except that we were discussing good organizations and bad organizations based on their ability to actually execute the things they want to see. Because there's no other thing to judge an organization on. It doesn't matter that it looks good if it does nothing. Though what it does may not be what you would do, but it needs to fulfill its actual purpose. If it cannot respond to the needs it faces, it's not a good organization. If it cannot move in a way that allows it to deal with a crisis, if a crisis arises, it's not a good organization. And granted, sometimes those things take longer to deal with than others. But I've seen certain organizations which have structured themselves in such a way that they simply cannot respond to any sort of danger or threat that they might face. And they had the great luxury of doing that in an era when they really didn't face any particular dangers. But society is moving very quickly now, and our organizations need to be able to move when they need to move, to act when they need to act, and to be able um, to meet the challenges they may face. And certainly the challenges they will face, but also the ones they may face. Because, we don't know what challenges are waiting for us around the bend. That's part of life. That's part of how we grow in life. And we cannot necessarily wait until we see them to be prepared for them. One of the things that I think that the pagan community needs to be very mindful of, there is an attempt now to create a particular law. I'm not certain if it's actually gone through yet or not, but I suspect it's going to if it hasn't already, which allows the government to simply eliminate a 501c3 organization if they decide it's a terrorist organization. And this is caused by the events of the last few years in the Middle East. And it's a very dangerous thing, really, because you don't have to look far back to see how easily that term of terrorist can be manipulated. And I think we need to be prepared for someone trying to put it on us as we go forward. They've tried it before. They've tried linking our sacred symbols to gang activity and using that as an excuse to ban them from schools, for example. We were able to fight that. But one reason we were able to fight that is we didn't wait for the challenge to occur. We already had things like the Lady Liberty League in place to deal with it before the challenge happened. And I think we need to be preparing, whether we ever see that challenge or not. We need to have our answers ready. We need to be thinking of these things. And we're very foolish if we don't. And hello to Moondancer. And I see certain people who represent themselves variously as leaders or elders of the community saying, oh, there's nothing to worry about. We shouldn't be fear-mongering, etc. And I don't think that many of our personal histories lead us to give that point of view credence. Moondancer says that they were a victim of this very thing I'm talking about, of declaring the pentagram, for example, a gang symbol. And she says, they say they were kicked out of 3 high schools over this. We know that we are likely to face challenges, and being prepared for it is not in any way foolish. Thinking that preparation for it is foolish. And should we be certain that we're going to face this sort of challenge? Well, no. We won't. We don't absolutely know. But should we prepare for it? Absolutely. We'd be fools if we don't. Can we properly prepare for it? Well, that's something that's very hard to say. But we can do what we can do. And I mean, we'll see what happens. We claim we believe in magic. We claim we believe in divination. Now is the time for them. And we shall see where we stand as time goes forward. But as we look at the closing of this year and the opening of the new year, one thing is absolutely certain, and that's that there's going to be a great deal of change, at least in certain parts of the world, here in the United States, certainly, and that a certain amount of it is going to be rather chaotic. And that, in fact, to some extent, we are in the chaos moment in a very real way. And, again, this is something that we should expect from the turning of the age. And I've been writing about um, the turning of the age for 30 years now, maybe a little longer. And part of what you see in the turning of the age is the dissolution of old systems. A few of them will survive into the new age, many of them will not. And it's only to be expected that we should see that. What is more important is for us to be focused on what we wish to see develop. And, as a community, I don't think that the pagan community is remotely able to answer that at this moment. And I'm not even talking to the pagan community. I'm talking to my viewers when I say it's time for us to really look at what we want to see in the future. And, there are going to be people out there who will object to everything because that's just what they do. My opinion is we don't need those people. There are going to be people out there who will totally refuse to focus in any particular direction. We don't really need those people either. We can have room for them, but they're not going to be part of any sort of positive action because they've chosen not to be. And hello to Vladimir in the chat room, who says the new president has and is being supported by what I call the evangelicals, and they control him. It certainly does appear to be the case. The only thing I can say to that is there have been other times it appeared to be the case and didn't quite pan out that way. But we certainly have every reason to assume that everything in Project 2025 is going to be attempted. Not necessarily successfully, but at least attempted, because they've been very clear about it. And many of these things have nothing to do with us. Others go very much against the teachings of our faith. And, I'm not saying this in a partisan sense, but in terms of the moral teachings of our faith that we must focus on. And Vladimir says it's going to be a tough future. Well, I think we are in for a long period of rather chaotic change. And so I would have to agree. I think it is going to be rather difficult. And who can we look to during this time for strength and support? Well, hopefully we can look to each other. I've spoken several times about the relief efforts of Byron Ballard and the Mother Grove Goddess Temple in the wake of Hurricane Helene. But they are the perfect example of what our community could do for our people. Will our community rise to that level? I don't know. I would suspect a portion of it will. I would suspect another portion will attempt to prevent it, just based on my experience of this community. But therein comes the secret that I stand very strongly by, which is that those who wish to work together should. And those who don't need to be involved in those projects. Let them go do what they want to do. If they don't think it's a good idea, they don't need to be involved. One of the worst mistakes I have seen repeated again and again and again is trying to force everyone into a single project that not everyone agrees with. And then the people who don't agree with it entirely predictably sabotage it. It's much better for the people who agree in the first place to work together, and people who feel differently can go and do what they feel is right. And I hope that we will not. Well, I know that we will repeat that mistake in some parts of our community, but I hope that my part will not. I hope that you will not repeat that mistake because it is so easily avoidable. Now, I see that we're at 25 past the hour. I want to take a moment for a message from our sponsors. Why? Because we love our sponsors. And here we go.
Ready to unlock the secrets of the universe? Join me, Reverend Don Lewis, for my metaphysical and magic auctions at Gaia Thrift at whatnot.com. Discover fascinating artifacts, mystical crystals, and rare and unusual books that could change your life. Don't miss this chance to bring a little magic into your world. Reverend Don's Metaphysical and Magic Auctions, where the extraordinary can become yours.
And thank you to our sponsors. And once again, we need a new platform. And we want to thank our sponsors, Equinox Learning Hub and Reverend Don's Metaphysical and Magic Auctions. I believe the next auction is scheduled for Tuesday, which is called Giving Tuesday, which is appropriate since Gaia Thrift is, in the end, an elder care ministry of the Corellian Community Church, which is a Corellian parachurch. And I hope you'll join us for that. And, well, that would be tomorrow. Well, we'll see. We shall see what follows. I will be back tomorrow, and I will be discussing something interesting, and we shall see what it is. And hopefully we will not have the same problem getting our show up and going tomorrow that we had today. And I'll tell you what happened today, since I have a couple of minutes. When you program the telecast, or the broadcast rather, you put in the title and the description and so forth, and you set all the channels. So I did all of that, and I went to set the channels, and it started saying, oh, this requires a description, this requires a description. Well, I'd already put the description in. So I went and I put it in again, and it refused to take it. I eventually was able to set it for just 2 channels and set it to go live, and then I was able to edit the channels after the fact. This is ridiculous for a paid service. Restream should be extremely embarrassed by this. It is deeply objectionable. So we are currently looking for something to replace it. Chances are you will not overly notice when we do, because it will still be the same program. But speaking of practicality, in order to continue doing the things we do, we need a reliable platform. And this has basically ceased to be it. However, it's not the only platform we've ever used, nor is it the only platform out there. And meanwhile, we'll continue coming to you through whatever way is best for the moment. One of the things that is very important to understand about the group of people who put this on is we're great believers in the idea of love your message, not your platform. We've changed our platform many, many times, and we'll change it many, many more times to come. But our message stays the same. And our message is hope for all of our future. And with that, I want to thank you for joining me, and let us close with our prayer as we always do. Divine Mother Goddess, Divine Father God, beloved ancestors, we thank you for all that you do for us in our lives, and we rejoice in your presence. And this walk we walk together, beloved Mother Goddess, beloved Father God, beloved ancestors, we thank you with great love. Knowing you're always with us, we thank you for your presence, and may you be blessed now and always.